Austria and Denmark have teamed up with Israel to produce second-generation vaccines against new mutations of the coronavirus. The initiative, dubbed the First Movers Group, comes amid growing frustration over delays in the EU's vaccine rollout. Israel has offered 94 doses per 100 people and EU just 7. The Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz said it was right that the bloc should get vaccines for member states, but criticised the European Medicines Agency's slow approval process. A spokesman for the European Commission said member states are free to strike unilateral deals should they choose to do so. Well, for more on this, let's speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's in Brussels for us. Darren, what more can you tell us about this deal?
Well, I think, first of all, we should remind ourselves that this is not really about what's happening right now with the vaccine rollout, though it is inevitably linked. This is about later on this year or potentially next year when we will possibly all need to get booster shots once we've had our jabs. There is concern that some of the variants that are currently out there, whether they be South African one or the Brazilian one, make the vaccines a bit less effective, and also that new mutations or variants could emerge in the coming months. Also, it's not entirely clear how long immunity may well last for these vaccinations. So at some stage later down the line, whether it's later this year, next year or the year after, it is entirely possible that we may need to get jabbed again. And essentially what Denmark and Austria are looking at is tying up with Israel, which has clearly had a very successful vaccination rollout, to see if they can try and work together on this kind of second wave of vaccines. And that means involvement when it comes to production, for example, or sharing scientific knowledge. Now, why is this really interesting? Well, in part because it has been motivated by the EU's very slow rollout of the vaccine project in terms of procurement, a sign that some member states do not want a repeat of that and are turning elsewhere. And so I think it is somewhat, maybe not a slap in the face, but it's, a little bit damaging for Brussels that member states are already at this stage talking about keying up with member states outside the EU, in part because they feel that up until now, the vaccine rollout here in Europe has really not been up to scratch.
Dan, we've heard today that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to be reviewed by the EU next week. We know, of course, it's a viral vector vaccine like the contentious Oxford AstraZeneca one. So are we going to see the same round of problems again?
I don't think so, because I think there were two things that were linked to AstraZeneca, which really hadn't got to do with the technology behind the vaccine. In fact, the technology that both Moderna and AstraZeneca use when it comes to their vaccination process is a far more traditional one than the ones that Pfizer, for example, has used. But I think what's interesting with this is that, one of the questions about AstraZeneca was the trial data. Clearly, I think what we've seen from from Johnson & Johnson, I said, not Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, is a lot clearer to date than it was first time round with AstraZeneca. So I don't think there will be any disputes around that. And second of all, when it comes to supply issues, clearly that is another thing. We know that Johnson & Johnson is a one-dose vaccine. That is crucial. The EU's ordered 200 million doses. When those doses will arrive, well, clearly they'll have to work out a scheduling over the coming months. But I suspect it will be a lot less controversial than what we've seen with AstraZeneca. A reminder that many of the criticisms, particularly around the efficacy of AstraZeneca, have proven in retrospect to be false, and that, as the EMA stated when they first approved it, is safe and effective for all adults, including those over the age of 65.